In this video, we're going to be adding fractions together. So our problem is 5 over 6 is added to 6 over 7. Now, the first thing we have to do, or the main thing that's important when we start a problem where we're adding fractions, is we need to check the denominators. Okay, we can't just go ahead and add our fractions together. We need to make sure the denominators, so these numbers on the bottom, are the same number. Okay, if they're not the same number, we cannot add the fractions yet. Okay, we're going to need to transform or manipulate the fractions so that we end up with the same number for the denominator for both or however many fractions we're adding together. And then once we do have the same denominators, we can go ahead and add the fractions at that time. Okay, so you might be saying, how are we going to change the denominators? What do we need to do that? Okay, now I'm going to show you a trick I like to use. It will always work. However, it's not necessarily going to give you what's called the lowest common denominator, okay? It's going to give you a common denominator, and that's all we really care about, okay? As long as we have a common denominator, that means we're going to have the same denominator for all our fractions, and we can go ahead and add them. Once we've added our fractions, we're always going to need to look at our answer and see, can we reduce this further, okay? Can we simplify it, maybe rewrite it a different way, okay? So because of that, I'm not too concerned about trying to find the lowest common denominator. I just want to find a common denominator, okay? To find the lowest common denominator requires a few more steps and can be a little complicated. And in the end, we're still going to get the same answer, okay? So this method will sometimes give you the lowest common denominator, but it's always going to give you a common denominator. So if your teacher or if on an exam or whatever, they ask you for the lowest common denominator, this method is not necessarily going to give you that, okay? But this method will always allow you to solve this kind of problem, okay? So let's go ahead and I'm going to show you how to do this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite my first term, my first fraction, which is 5 over 6. Then I'm going to look at my second term. In this case, the denominator is a 7 in my second term. I'm going to take this number, this 7, the denominator of my other fraction, and I'm going to multiply it by both my denominator and my numerator of my first term, okay? It seems a little complicated, but it's going to get easier. Okay, now we're going to add that because that's our order of our operation, here. Now we're going to add that because that's what the operation is. We're going to take our second term or our second fraction. I'm going to rewrite that, 6 over 7. And I'm going to look at my other term. So my first term again, I'm going to look at that denominator, which in this case is 6. And I'm going to multiply both my denominator and my numerator of my second term by the denominator of my first term. Okay? So I'm doing the opposite. Okay? Now, you might think this is a little complicated. I'm not sure if it worked. You're going to know if it worked because when we simplify these, when we multiply these through, if we end up with the same number in the denominator of all of our fractions, or in this case, our two fractions, then it works. Okay, we did it right. So let's go ahead and simplify these. We have 5 times 7. That gives us 35. And that's going to be over our denominator, which is 6 times 7, which is 42. I'm going to add that to our second fraction, which is 6 times 6 in the numerator, which is 36. And 7 times 6, which is 42, in the denominator. Now let's look. We have the same denominator, 42. Okay, so it's perfect. That means that we were able to find a common denominator, okay? It's the same number. Is it the lowest? Maybe, maybe not. In this case, it is, but it doesn't really matter. We found a common denominator, and if we need to, when we get to our answer, we can reduce it further, okay? So let's see. Let's go ahead and add these. Now, when we add fractions, we keep the denominator the same. So they're both 42. So our answer is going to have a denominator of 42. This is why it's so important that they're the same, okay? Because when we add them, we're not touching the denominator anymore. So all we do to add fractions then is we look at our two numerators and we add them together. So 35 and 36 is 71. Now, 71 over 42 is our answer. If you would like to learn how to quickly study for your GED exam online and get a new resume, then visit testprepskills.com.